You're listening to Scaling Up Services, where we speak with entrepreneurs, authors, business experts, and thought leaders to give you the knowledge and insights you need to scale your service-based business faster and easier. And now, here is your host, business coach Bruce Eckfeldt.
Are you a CEO looking to scale your company faster and easier? Check out Thrive Roundtable. Thrive combines a moderated peer group mastermind, expert one-on-one coaching, access to proven growth tools, and a 24/7 support community. Created by Inc. award-winning CEO and certified scaling up business coach Bruce Eckfeldt, Thrive will help you grow your business more quickly and with less drama. For details on the program, visit eckfeldt.com/thrive. That's ECKFELDT.com/thrive.
Welcome, everyone. This is Scaling Up Services. I'm Bruce Eckfeldt. I'm your host. And our guest today is Gendel, and he is an Agile consultant, coach. We're going to talk to him a little bit about organizational design, about his experience in working with companies to change the way they work to be more responsive, more customer-focused, more iterative in the way they operate and deliver. With that, Gene, welcome to the program.
Bruce, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being on your podcast. Let me do a quick intro. I'm not so great at introducing myself.
Go ahead.
But I will say just a few things, my hometown, my home base is in New York City. This is where I live, and this is where most of my actions take place. This is where I serve most of my clients. I have traveled the world and have been pretty much all over the globe, a lot over the United States. My niche is in organizational design and consultancy, system dynamics, training, coaching, adaptive learning, agility. Those are the buzzwords that usually get thrown up in the air. That's how people associate, my name with what I do. But I try to tone down on terminology as much as I can because lately it has been dramatically overloaded.
Overused to some extent.
Overused, overloaded, redefined.
So let's start with a couple of things. First, let's talk a little bit about what we mean by Agile, what we mean by Lean. So, again, these terms get thrown around a lot and kind of mean, I think, a lot of things to different people. What do they mean for you? Like when you talk about an organization being Agile or being Lean, what does that mean?
Okay. Well, let me put it this way. So I try to strike the term Agile from my dictionary, and I made that decision a few years back when I was privy to the history of the term Agile as we know it today. Yeah. In fact, not too many people know, but back in 2001, when the Agile Manifesto was written, the bunch of guys that got together in Snowbird, Utah, they contemplated what they should really call this thing that they're about to launch. I think the word adaptive was given an equal opportunity at that time. Yeah. And I'm not going to digress to say exactly why the word Agile has been chosen over the word adaptive. But as long as, just to be clear, the word adaptive was the original precursor. There was the original candidate. Yep. And we ended up with the word Agile. And the reason why the word Agile is less pleasant to my ears is because a layman person does not really perceive it well. Yeah. It's not a layman person's language or lingo unless someone comes from sports, athletics, or military. They don't really understand what agility really means. When they say adaptive, that's a little more a household term, and that's easier to understand. So for me, a litmus test for anything that is labeled as agile would be, well, can you also call it adaptive? Does it still make sense? If the answer is yes, then then you're probably using the word agile rightfully. But if you just lost sense, that means you probably were misusing the word agile. And if we go back to Wikipedia, Agile is nothing but a limp, light-footed, acrobatic, less and very, very adaptive. It's like almost, think of it, being able to turn on a dime for a dime without breaking a leg. Yeah. If you can do that, going like 60 miles an hour, and then turn on a dime for a dime and not break your leg, that makes it pretty adaptive. If it took you forever to do it, or if you had to spend a lot of energy or something happened along the way, that means it wasn't a cheap move for you. Yeah. So you weren't that adaptive. That's the word adaptive. So you also mentioned the word lean. Yep. So lean to me, we can go back to lean thinking and they probably talk for a long time about this. To me, lean is something that makes us light, waste-free, or waste-conscious, And when I think of lean development or lean companies, I think of a very, very lean steak with very little fat to it and lots of protein. So to me, lean is where we really don't overburden ourselves, overwhelm ourselves with excessive, cumbersome stuff. And this stuff comes in the form of processes, tools, protocols, disciplines, roles, responsibilities, artifacts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So that's really my definition of lean. And of course, in order to be agile, in order to be adaptive, a person or an athlete or a machine has to be lean.
Yeah.
Because if we carry too much extra body weight, then our ability to turn on a dime for a dime would be so much lower. So that's how I married it too.
I like it. Yeah, and I think that's an important kind of point or clarification or reframing of that agile term in terms of adaptive, because I think a lot of people, at least my experience is, a lot of people kind of go into this or think about, well, we want to learn how to be agile, and then once we learn, we're done. and I think that kind of misses one of the tenets of lean agile, which is you're never really done. Right? I mean, it's a constant pursuit.
Yeah, and it's a journey, and one of the things I've seen more often than not, I wish I didn't, is when actually it comes from senior leadership of many companies.
Yeah.
When are we going to become agile?
Yeah.
It isn't a binary switch overnight. It's a journey.
Yeah.
It may take months or years, and just by setting that tone alone, actually leads to lots of dysfunction in system gaming, because everyone wants to call it a win. We have become agile. We're done. We're never done.
Yeah. Then that's that can be hard for some folks that want to check the box, or they want to, if they want to write one check that get them the whole way, and it's not really how it works. Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about from an organization point of view. So philosophically, the idea of, turn on a dime for a dime, that makes sense. When it comes to actual organization adaptability, what are some of the things you look at, or some of the things that you're helping a company with to be more adaptive?
Well, as a coach, so I try to not lead when I enter a company. I try not to lead off with a statement such as, I would like to make you more adaptive, or I would like to make you more agile, because they just rubs off the wrong way. As I mentioned, there's so much terminology overloading and terminology hijacking out there. I'll just trip the wire at hello. So I would typically walk in with a mission to learn, what a company is like from a standpoint of organizational design, reporting structure. And the first thing I would typically ask for, could you please give me a blueprint of your organizational structure? Give me your org chart. Yeah. An org chart is a very good indicator what a company would look like. Many people out there, even some coaches out there, maybe less versed people, they think that they can walk in and change organizational culture, at hello. They actually focused on the wrong thing, because I actually leverage a lot what I learned from Craig Larman and some other agile evangelists out there. Actually, Craig says, and this is one of the Larman's laws of organizational behavior, culture follows structure. Yeah. Following on the wrong thing will get us to the wrong place. It is the structure, organizational design and structure, that's the primary indicator of everything. I call it a first degree variable that defines system dynamics.
Interesting.
Once we understand what a structure is like, we can kind of figure out what a culture is going to look like.
It's funny. We had this. I spent a lot of time on the technology side in Agile, and we always had this phrase of "show me how your teams are structured, and I'll tell you how your code is structured." And that the code structure will mimic how the organization is set up, and how how control and how fiefdoms and how boundaries between departments are designed. Like that will end up impacting how the software system is designed. And I think the same is true, for many parts of organizations. Like how you choose to organize people will impact a lot of things about how the organization behaves.
It's funny you say this because what you just described is actually what I think back in 1967, Mel Conway defined as a Conway's law. Organizational systems is the direct blueprint of organizational structure. Yeah. So when we say org structure, we mean teams, of course, right? So if a team is quasi ill-defined, then a code base, then a system they built, it's going to be also ill-defined. We're going to have that 80-20 perimeter problem where you got 80% of the system are doing 20% of the thing, but we're spending so much time on building things that are not necessary. So I totally wholeheartedly agree with what you just said. If the team structure is ill-defined, so will be the code base. And I think the guy who I also respect a lot, his name Bob Martin.
Uncle Bob.
Uncle Bob. Yeah. When he talks about clean coders, he refers to team structure as well. I mean, your crappy teams will produce crappy code.
Yeah. So walking into an organization, you ask for the blueprint, you see the blueprint. What are you looking for? Like, what are you noticing or observing in what that blueprint looks like?
Well, I usually whisper to my own head, into my own ear, the flatter the better. The flatter the better.
Uh-huh.
And I don't always expect to see a complete flatness, but what I do like to see is an organization that's conducive of waste removal effort.
Yeah,
could be done internally by themselves, or maybe with help of an organizational design consultant such as myself. If I walk into the company and I get a blueprint of an org chart that has a apex structure that is very, very monolithic, very, very convoluted, very cumbersome organizational design.
Yeah.
To me, it's a good indication that this org structure has a lot of waste, has a lot of challenging processes, tools, norms, protocols, relationships, and it's just a very, very, very difficult, object to work with.
Yeah.
So I always look for that, possibility of future flatness. And again, it's a journey. It isn't something that could happen overnight.
Yeah.
So I look for those indicators, reporting lines, how many people report into how many people, who's doing what, how many single specialty roles we have, how much governance, how much command and control, how much potential condescending top-down behaviors we should expect. Those things you can actually fish out from just looking at the org chart.
Yeah.
Again, we don't look for complete flatness because orgs need to have senior leadership. That it's not totally flat, but there's a difference between having a pyramid that has
a wide base,
wide base versus a very narrow base and super tall. So if you see super tall structures, we know that they have been built to locally optimize many unnecessary roles, processes, and tools.
Yeah.
It's really local optimization versus organizational system, global optimization. That's what we look after. If we see a lot of local optimization for roles, responsibilities, single specialty, single function roles, this is an indicator that this organization is very not agile.
Yeah.
And very not lean. And on the flip side of it, there's plenty of work for us to do. But
well, I'm curious. Is there any organizational pattern that you see in an org chart or a blueprint that you would look at and you would walk away from? That you would say this is just not fixable, or we need to just start over versus doing incremental change against this plan?
If I look at the org chart at hello, and if I see it looks overly complex and overly cumbersome, that alone is not a turnoff for me. That's not a push away.
Yeah. Okay.
What will make me less optimistic and more skeptical is if people that have invited me also expect me to treat the org structure as a de facto that is not challengeable. That's the problem.
Unwillingness to change. Yeah.
Yeah. If there is no willingness to change, if they would like to treat their org structure, their org design as is today, as a de facto, as something is not going to change, and if they expect us to work around and about to do the bare minimum so that someone can check the box, I would usually step back and say, look, there's so much I can do, right? I like bringing lots of analogies in my training and in my conversations from construction industry, from health and therapeutics, and from medicine. And I would give something like this. I would say, look, you're asking me to help you, let's say, to drop 200 pounds. At the same time, you're not willing to change your habit.
You don't want to exercise. You don't want to go on a diet. Yeah.
You don't want to go exercise. You don't want to go on a diet. You do not want to do anything that will bring you to a better state. And you just want me to work with you on your superficial appearance. And if that's the case, then I will be disservicing you. and I will be actually breaching my own internal, personal working ethics. So, and I probably would push away from the table.
Yeah. No, I get it. So let's talk a little. You mentioned a couple of things before I wanted to dig into a little bit. So you mentioned waste in a process, and you mentioned local versus system optimization. What do those things mean? I mean, I'd sort of educate our listeners here a little bit about what you mean by those things.
Yeah, sure. So I'll probably start with the local versus system or global optimization, because that's usually, once you learn it, it's hard to unlearn it.
Good.
You start seeing it pretty much everywhere. So imagine a single specialty role. Let's take a system architect, a senior system architect that hasn't really coded, for the last 20 years, maybe not ever. Apparently there's some people that have managed to become senior architects without ever putting a line of code down.
I've seen them.
So, and then let's imagine this. So this person is locally optimized to create work, to create, and let's fast forward. Let's look at Scrum as one of the most commonly used Agile frameworks. That person would be solely optimized to create lots of backlog items, or user stories as we call them, in a backlog that are specific to architecture. Guess what? These are not cross-cutting, cross-functional user stories. These are componentized. Architecture is a component. Yeah. These are componentized user stories. They're not even user stories. They're componentized chunks of work.
Yeah.
So locally, this person would be doing the best he or she can to produce many backlog items that are architecture-centric and work against them. And they will be overly busy. They will be super busy doing great job working just on architecture. From a local perspective, they are doing really well. From a system perspective, from a standpoint of a buying customer, if I was a product owner, if I was a buying customer, I would probably ask a question: what the hell are you working on?
Yeah.
You're working on architecture that is like 6-7 months out.
Yeah.
I may not even need it today. So we can think of some other single function specialties that could be potentially drafted into the same type of work. For instance, take UI UX designer only. He or she would be only optimized to develop GUI, and that GUI could go, months and months out, but that GUI will not be really talking to business tier or to back-end logic. So from the standpoint of a buying customer, I'm wondering why you're working on stuff that is low priority to me.
Yeah.
Take a BA, take a business analyst. They write BRDs, Agile BRDs, or they write Agile stories, business analyst stories that are, 4 or 5 months out. By the time we get to those BAs have probably, decommissioned and went elsewhere. So there's no one to interpret this work. But they were very local optimized when they did this in the first place.
I sometimes use the analogy, and maybe a little facetious, but I use the analogy of moving deck chairs on the Titanic. If all you know how to do is move deck chairs, when the ship is going down, you're just going to start moving deck chairs really, really fast because you need to feel busy, because you sense urgency. But if your purview is so focused in a local situation, that's not going to help the overall situation. But yet there's nothing you can do. Like if you're stuck in a local optimization scenario.
That's right. And funny you said this because, there's a fundamental difference between a system output and system outcome. These guys are very keen on having high output of their work. They're trying to be super productive in what they do, but the ultimate outcome is actually not so high, and when we married it too, it's really what really.
I like that. That's a new one for me. I like that, output versus outcome.
Outcome is what really brings your return on investment high. It's something that really puts food on the table. Output is like when teams are focused on velocity only, it's the rate of output. And when senior leadership keeps asking this question, what's the velocity? What's the velocity? That's paving the road to system gaming and inflating your estimates and just going after high velocity. What's the output on the tail end of it? What's the business impact? Could be very low.
Yeah.
So we don't want to go just fast. We want to go in the right direction.
Yeah, I have the story from back in my sort of development days of we were doing a backlog development meeting with a bunch of senior execs, and we were kind of talking through the business process, and we came up with all these stories, and we were all excited seeing this big backlog. We're gonna have weeks worth of work. It was like looking great, and then one of our developers was questioning this whole kind of process. It was shipping books. There was this element of shipping books, and they kind of looked at the system and they was like, well, we could just do make a file. We could just export this as a text file and just send it to email to the side, and once a day they could just just upload it to their system and they would basically get the same thing done. And all the senior execs were looking at us and saying, yeah, let's just do that. And we wiped out, 150 points of development that we were trying to integrate these things, because by really thinking about what was the output that was needed, like we were focused on trying to get output. Like we wanted stories we could deliver, and instead of just thinking the outcome, what was the outcome they wanted? We just wanted an updated record once a day to be able to ship the books. And I mean, from my point of view, it was kind of frustrating because we had it was probably $150,000 of development services that we wiped off the table. But that was just as good. It was just as good, if not better, than doing all this technical work. And so that whole thing of velocity, we could have spent 6 weeks with output, with generating stories and generating code and delivering points, but not really thinking about outcome. Or if you really think about outcome, we got to outcome much quicker by just taking a different path. And so I think that's often the case, and particularly on the development side of when you get stuck in the output mode and not thinking of the outcome mode. That's good. Yep. So I just want to talk a little bit about, outside of technology, when we think about this for really any kind of process or any kind of service-based business, or any business, but particularly service businesses. If you think of your the work that you do, the things that you do to deliver value to customers, whether you're a law firm or an accounting firm or marketing, or you do environmental engineering, you're producing reports. I mean, this is that same problem comes up. Like if you have someone who is is an expert or a single focused expert in a particular part of the process, that they will often look to create value in their little step, but that will make the overall delivery of value to the customer less efficient because of this local optimization versus the global sort of system throughput optimization. And I think that's something a lot of companies struggle with when they don't have a clear view of what the overall process looks like, and they're just looking at, particularly when they have management metrics in place to force billability and output focused measures around management, performance management. This can really become a problem. I mean, I've seen companies where a particular department is highly productive. They produce a whole lot of output, but it creates havoc for the rest of the organization. I don't know where you've seen this.
So I could, very painfully associate with what you just said, and let me explain why. Just give me a chance. So first, I'm going to play backwards a little bit. About performance measurements and about individual performance and all that. 50-year-old way of incentivizing and encouraging individuals to work hard and well. That is just, so old. That must go. So many companies these days just stepped away from this approach. There's so much literature, so much documentation, so much research and analytics behind not doing performance management the way it has been done for the last 40, 50 years. Yep. People are still in a Taylorian mindset. People are still in the McGregorish way of pushing down on people and dangling a carrot in front of their nose and trying to make them work hard. Yeah. Not smart. So that whole thing makes it. I think it makes a blood boil of many people, but not too many people yet speak about it out loud. Yeah. So that's that. I think the other question was about you mentioned about local optimization being seen not just in product development space. That's very true. Like one of the biggest ironies of my recent experience, but also, I could roll back a few years back. More often than not, I would have to interface with someone who would think that Agile, who would think of Scrum or Kanban being designed only for software engineering. Now, truth be told, Scrum was originally created for product development and for software development. However, it has gone so much broader and wider than just software engineering. Like if you look at Kanban, for instance, it started from Toyota Production System. We can roll back, decades and decades before software engineering was even, as big as we know today. Yeah. So it does not have to do only with software engineering. It could be so much more. Yeah. It could be in marketing. We could see Agile Agile type of work in marketing, in construction, in HR, in procurement, in vendor management, pretty much anything we put our finger on, we can scrutinize the way people work from a standpoint, are you being adaptive in the way you have been working? Are you local optimizing just for the benefit of your local little group or this specific individual? Or are you optimizing for the overall outcome? So that's just, so I've seen it plenty.
Yeah.
And what strikes me often is that people think, well, if they are not in software engineering space, if they're not in product development space, then this does not apply to them. I always use a simple analogy. If someone does construction work in their house, and if they have a construction crew that comes on site that is specialized in everything from soup to nuts, plumbing, carpentry, masonry, decorations, roofing, and every worker on that crew can do something more than just his or her single specialty. Wouldn't that be better? If you need to do demolition and you got a 10-man crew, guess what? Everyone can do it.
Yeah.
If you want to do plumbing and there are 3 people that are experts in plumbing, or 2 or 3 are good at plumbing, then you just have extended your capacity from 3 to 5.
Yeah.
So that could be so. And we talk about funding or budgeting. As a homeowner, would you rather pay incrementally to your crew, maybe every few weeks, and see what they have done for you so you can course correct and make sure you don't spend your money on things that are not maybe necessary? Or would you rather sign an SOW with them that, speaks about, 7 months out deliverable, and they don't let you back in 7 months, and then they come back to your home and you see they put a sink in the middle of the guest room, you know?
Yeah.
Those are analogies I usually use, and this is, so I can very strongly associate with those cases where people think, well, Agile isn't for us because we're not in software engineering. This isn't true.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's interesting. I think when you pull back to kind of the principles and the ideas and kind of techniques around agility, and then you can start applying it to basically anything. I mean, I always joke. I have my wife, gives me my, all the things that she wants done around the house, and I give her a stack of index cards, and I have her put each thing on an index card, and then I tell her roughly how long it's going to take me, and then I have her prioritize it, and it's just like I've applied Agile principles to managing my marriage on the weekend because it works. Because I'm happy to do anything. You tell me what's most valuable. You tell me what orders. I'll tell you, roughly how many hours I have or how many points I can get done. You tell me which ones, and I'm going to start at the top, and I'll do as many as I can. It's the basic principles. It's just applied to a very different context. But so let's talk about the other one, which was waste. When we talk about waste, I mean, we're not talking about trash and garbage around the office here. Like when we talk about waste inside process or inside, how an organization runs, what are we looking for? Like, what are the different categories and how do we identify them?
Well, if we are really strict about waste, how we define waste, anything that is not like we could probably use software development as an example, although I'd rather not based on what we just said, because not just software development. When we talk about Agile, it's not just software development. But here's an example. With software development, we could argue that anything but working code is a waste. But some of this is a necessary waste, right?
Yeah. Like,
for instance, the backlog and backlog items and acceptance criteria and processes around maintaining the backlog, like product backlog refinement or sprint planning. We can consider those as wasteful because in the end, your customer does not consume those. Anything that does not translate into a tangible deliverable that a paying customer pays for could be potentially considered waste. However, there's some of it is so
necessary,
inevitable, necessary. We have to deal with it.
Yeah,
and it will become a throwaway in the end, but we need to get through it. So what we look for those patterns, those cases where we see a lot of residual, unnecessary, cumbersome waste that is by far more excessive than minimal. We could use an example of, I think you mentioned metrics just a few minutes ago. Yeah. I believe that metrics just are as good as the people that produce them and people that consume them. So if we produce garbage metrics, if we produce something that is either misleading or it's not easy to consume, then not only is it wasteful, it is also harmful. We could call, let's look at the good old business requirements document. the BRD or something that's very heavy and monolithic. If we really parse that document line by line, we could potentially extract maybe 25 to 30% of it that could be translated into a functional specification into working code. The rest is fluff. The rest is stuff that is necessary to look the document good, to make the document look good. Yeah. That's wasteful. Yeah. And of course, we can digress into roles and responsibilities. This is actually more sticky and more challenging than people think, but it's necessary to talk about these things. Why? Because we're talking about local optimization. Well, guess what? If we have a team of 7, and it doesn't matter what they do, but whether they develop products or services, or they sell, or they market, or they procure something else, if out of these 7 people, only 2 or 3 people are actually doing tangible, meaningful work that translates into a deliverable, and the other few are there to maybe collect metrics or create reports or create statuses or do stuff that is unnecessary. Now we're seeing waste not only in artifacts. Now we see waste in processes and perhaps in some of the roles. So this is where organizations, and this is actually a sticky part, because when we start talking about waste in roles and responsibilities, any organization that has a lot of the latter will become natural defensive. Because this actually goes back to one of the Larman's laws of organizational behavior. Organizations are locally I'm paraphrasing. Organizations are locally optimized to protect status quo or a first and middle level management. When we say first, so it's not necessarily management. It's not necessarily a person who is in a management position, although it's oftentimes the case. Yeah. It is people that sit in this middle tier that we call the frozen middle. People that sit in the middle, and they kind of they have benefited from when things become stale and things become idle. When there was a lot of waste, there's more stuff to work on. Right? We can think of an elephant or a rhino. As it grows, it consumes more food. As it consumes more food, it becomes bigger. As it becomes bigger, it needs more food. So it's a positive feedback loop. It's a vicious cycle. So we have more waste. We need more people to work on that waste. Once we have more people, then we need to create ways to get them busy.
No, exactly. Yeah, I think that's the when organizations focus on sort of keeping everyone busy, that often ends up creating a whole bunch of inefficient or a whole bunch of waste in processes, just because people need to look busy. If that's the organizational culture, if that's how people get managed.
That's right. We are busy and we're working hard, and that's just doesn't cut it, right? For me, at least, it doesn't cut it, because we don't want people to work hard. We want to work smart. Yeah. We want them to gain, lifestyle back. We don't want them to do, run 5 miles in the wrong direction on a tangent and then, go another 3 miles in a different direction. So they actually, I forget the theorem from geometry. So you have to, but I think you know what I'm alluding to. You have to go in the right direction, right? Yes. And if you realize early enough that you're not going in the right direction, you have to change the course. Yeah. And that's what makes us adapt, right?
Rule number 1, you find yourself in a hole, is stop digging. It doesn't help to dig faster. Okay. Yeah, this has been fascinating. I mean, I think there's, lots we could discuss about applying this in different areas, but I think this is a really good discussion around adaptability and, why we kind of think about or help companies with agility and thinking about lean. Gene, if people want to find out more about you and the work that you do, what's the best way to get that information?
I try to keep it very humble and sort of keep it low, but people probably could Google me. I have a website. I call it a non-for-profit website. There's practically no what's going on, but I have collected a bunch of good information of it. It's keystepstosuccess.com. Okay. There's plenty of artifacts. There are blog. There are thousands and thousands of articles, some recommended books, some feeds, RSS feeds. So it's some pretty cool stuff people can find there. And of course, through the website, they can find me. They can find me on LinkedIn. They can just Google for my last name, my first name. I don't try to hide. I'm out there, but
I'll put the URL and the link to your profile on the show notes here so people can click through. But this is a great discussion. There's probably a couple more episodes we could do in getting into all the details and the organizational change side of it and how organizations change and what they struggle with. But I think this is a great discussion around just agility and adaptability, and it was really helpful. I really appreciate the time.
Oh yeah. I'm happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me. And I like you said it right. We just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
We are talking about 50,000 feet view, and there's so much more to. If we start peeling back all of these topics, we're going to discover lots of great stuff. So has been fascinating for me to have a discussion with you, Bruce, and hopefully it will be useful to your listeners as well.
Yeah, and we'll schedule more episodes. We'll get into those. Those are important topics.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks again.
Well, thanks, Bruce. We'll be in touch.
You've been listening to Scaling Up Services with business coach Bruce Eckfeldt. To find a full list of podcast episodes, download the tools and worksheets, and access other great content, visit the website at scalingupservices.com. And don't forget to sign up for the free newsletter at scalingupservices.com.